Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Activities for People Living with Dementia. We're proud to offer this series with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way of Tarrant County. Bless their hearts. If you'd like to check out our YouTube, you can go to dementiafriendlyfortworth.org. Click on our logo, which is a longhorn on a blue background, and check out our videos. I am Martha Brown, your host for today's activities. Today, Peggy Spier is bringing us from the Amon Carter Museum of American Art a series of Avedon's portraits, and I can't wait to see who we're going to look at today. Peggy, is it Jackie O or is it somebody else?
They are people you would never, ever know otherwise unless Avedon took his portrait. So this is a different, not celebrity version of Avedon.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's get to it. So some of you might know the name Richard Avedon. He was a very famed fashion photographer, working for Vogue, working in New York City. He did celebrity, actors, politicians, you name it. Anybody kind of worth their weight in salt, he would have taken their picture, their portrait. He had a very, very distinct style of portraiture that really put him on the map, made a name for himself. And so as he was, kind of in the height of his fame, the current, or at the time, director Mitch Wilder of the Amon Carter commissioned, imported Richard Avedon, commissioned him to then do a series of portraits about the American West. So that was in 1978. He got Richard on the hook. And then starting in 1980 through 1985, Richard Avedon was then traveling the western part of the country, taking photographs of the West. So when I say the West, what kind of images are you expecting when someone says, oh, they're pictures of the West?
Cattle.
Cattle, yep.
Cowboys.
Cowboys, you got it.
The Grand Canyon landscape.
Yes, landscapes, yep. I heard someone say cowgirl.
Yeah, don't forget the cowgirls.
You're right. There are, yes, cowgirls are something of, when you think about the West, traditionally in art history terms, cowgirls are a little less represented than those cowboys. And even indigenous people are another probably component of Western art that are often depicted.
Okay.
But so, yeah, you hit on it. You hit the landscape, the cattle driving and farming and cowboys, American Indians. That's what we were kind of thinking we would get with Avedon. Well, we did not get that with Avedon. He wanted to photograph the kind of the underbelly, if that's even the right word, the oppressed peoples of the not beaten path subjects of the American West. And
Yeah,
so
the struggling people.
say that again.
Struggling people, the cotton pickers and
Yes, exactly right. The people who make the West run, but are not typically celebrated the way cowboys and landscape and things like that are.
our great grandparents.
Say that again.
Our great grandparents, what they had to go through.
Now I think you're starting to deviate a little bit from what his intention was, but it was the everyday type of person, not the celebrity.
And this was in this picture was taken in 1979, so it's not that long ago.
No.
That old.
No, it's not that long ago. And the person's 13, so it's not typical Western art. You're not typically thinking of children being depicted in the artwork. It's usually these, younger strapping men who are, older men with the grizzly beard. That's not this. This is a young boy who was in Sweetwater. This was the first stop Avedon took in Sweetwater, Texas. And he took tons of pictures while he was there, but 6 of those pictures he decided were, okay, this is the direction we're going. So this trip to Sweetwater is what set the bar and the tone for what this whole series would look like. And the reason we're looking at this today is because Richard Avedon, this is his 100th-year birthday. And so we're celebrating the photography that was his. But this particular series right now, this was such a major photographic touchstone in the history of art and for the Amon Carter. It's pretty cool that we were the ones that commissioned this. So these are photographs. This photograph in particular is one of the more notable pictures in the entire series. So I wanted to kind of give you the introduction. This is the first photograph and one of the more famous photographs. That was
I can
taken.
see why.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. So what jumps out at you?
The dirty rattlesnake.
Is that guts?
Yep, these are the entrails of and he's got it wrapped in his hand.
Wow.
What
That
about
rattlesnake looks like he's going to be skinned for leather and cooked for dinner.
Don? I couldn't have paid you to say it better. He's skinning the snake, and this is part of that struggling class. You often associate snakeskin boots and belts with the businessmen of the West, or those with money to afford these kinds of luxuries. But we never focus on the people who are actually making these things for the wealthy. And so here's a perfect example of this young boy. He won this. I think he won the what is it? This rattlesnake roundup in Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Y'all ever been
That's
to
what I
that?
was going to say. I think that's where that is. Yeah.
Yep, that's what it was. I mean, think of how wild that would have been for a New Yorker coming down, showing up at this rattle roundup, and I mean, this is like so foreign to any sort of New Yorker. So he was really fascinated. He had them standing in front of like a white backdrop, and then so that's what this is, and then the metal around it. This is actually metal that the photograph is then mounted to. So it's like the picture is not behind glass. The picture is not in a frame. The picture is mounted to this sheet metal. And I don't know why it's not sending. But I took pictures in the gallery. These are monumental. These are larger than life. They are massive. You walk into a gallery and it takes your breath away how beautiful and large these photographs are. I'm just going to hold up my phone, which I know is very unappealing, but you can kind of get a sense for how large. Is it even adjusting how large the photograph
Oh,
is
wow.
in comparison to something on canvas?
So it would be like life size, or is it?
It's monumental, larger than life size.
Larger than life size. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're massive. They're beautiful. They're massive. They are stunning. So we started here. He took hundreds, a couple hundred pictures here and ended up with 6. So the tone has been set. This is currently not on view right now, but the next 4 are on view. So we got Ruby. What jumps out at you about her?
The clothes.
She's overdone.
Yeah. What about her clothing?
No,
Looks
the
like
jacket.
she's well off.
Well off. Okay. What, because of the embellishments on her coat?
Yeah.
Yes, plus a hat maybe.
And
Yeah.
makeup.
Her makeup.
Well, that's a fancy band on her hat too.
It's really, that is a very pretty hat band. So we see on all of the titles are the name of the subject in this series. There are 125 photographs. All of the titles are the name of the subject, their job, or what they identified as their job, where it was taken, and the date. So this was taken at Frontier Days in Cheyenne, that's like the last 10, 12 days in July. Have any of you been to Frontier Days?
No.
Yep, in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yes, I have.
Pretty fun, isn't it?
Yes.
It's wild. It's like basically like a state fair type of event in Cheyenne. There's professional bull riding, there's major concerts, but it started in, I believe, 1897. So it has this old Western feel, but they've been modernizing it as time goes on. And so here is Ruby, who's the publicist for the whole event. She is modernized what is a kind of traditional Western look. With the glitz and the glam,
Yeah.
She's
So-
serious.
Yeah, it's very, very serious. I mean, her face, did not ask anybody to smile, but you know, their face says a lot. Here, this is a 13-year-old boy who's gutting a snake and with no reaction. I mean, there's a sense of pride just holding his hand out, but his face isn't, you know, gloating or, I mean, he seems pretty stoic. The same, and all of his sitters, he's encouraged not to smile.
Oh, really? Okay.
But she looks, I find she looks sort of old fashioned, this woman here, with the way she has been dressed. And it's 82.
It feels
Yes.
old fashioned. It feels modern in that there's this beading embellishment on it, but it still feels kind of dated.
Yeah.
It's in Cheyenne, Wyoming, not Los Angeles, California. So there's this, it's a city, but it's a Western city that's smaller, but this is the big event of the year. So we're going to pull out all the stops, but the stops in this city are very different than the stops in another city. So you kind of get that sense of not in the upper echelon of people that might be in the New York circles or Chicago circles, things like that.
So, Peggy,
Yeah.
at these kind of events, people usually dress up in period style clothing.
They can.
So this is like it's a cross between modern and period style.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're
I
absolutely
used to
right.
live in Cheyenne, and this would not be unusual for, how you say, society events.
Right. Kind of think of how like stock show season is in Fort Worth. You see a lot more boots and hats and squash blossom necklaces than you do.
Of course, in Cheyenne, you saw them all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, it was like old Fort Worth.
Yeah,
yeah.
Cheyenne does have very much that same feel.
Yeah.
So but what's interesting is this is a female in Western wear. This is not typically what you think of when you think of depictions of Into the West. I mean, this is a third of the photographs in the series are of women, which is not, again, the general immediate thought when you think of Western portrayals. So this is pretty cool that Abaddon is tilting it on its, on the side of what the Western typically has been defined. All right, so we're gonna say farewell to Ruby in Cheyenne, and we're gonna meet Charlene up in Montana.
Wow.
What about this portrait gets you?
She looks like she's hardworking.
Rode hard and put away wet.
Yeah.
It's
Rough.
her eyes have a very haunting feel to me. I don't
Yeah.
know if that speaks to you, but she looks like she's put in some hard years.
Mhm.
We don't know much about her. We know that she's a physical therapist. But the subjects he took in Montana, so there's Charlene, and then there's Carol, and she's a bartender. Both of them are in the service industry. I mean, they're providing services to people. This isn't a white collar community. This isn't, an accountant and a surgeon. These are, real salt of the earth people who are not in the ranching and farming industry that you would typically associate with Montana and the West. These are people who are in the service industry and making a living in a way that could be done basically anywhere in the country. And so he's speaking to that notion of just because they're in the West doesn't make them part of that Western tradition or that Western stereotype.
She's a physical therapist to me, and I think in that part of Montana is because of the rodeo industry, the cattle industry. She has to take care of all those people, men and ladies who get injured.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we don't know specifics.
She probably was part of that scene herself. That's how she got into it. Is seeing the injuries and stuff because of being part of the rodeos and the.
Well, this she's just not just like she's going to a rodeo.
No, but her demeanor looks like she came from that background.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
She looks like a sexy therapist.
Say that again.
A sexy therapist.
Sexy therapist.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't know specifically where he caught them to take their portrait, but there's, this isn't something you would probably choose to wear to have your portrait made. So there feels like a sense of, she was out doing her thing and he invited her for this portrait and she agreed and here we are.
She could have been out running.
Right.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
it could have been at like a gym or something that she was at.
That top is not a running top, especially back in that year.
It's not.
It's a little more modest.
These days, there are a lot of ladies wear things like that as running tops. Don't worry. They bounce all over the place. I'm sorry.
Not back
Well,
then.
I wouldn't know, Steve. I don't pay attention to that sort of thing.
I don't either, but I see it,
I mean,
unfortunately.
now, yes,
been
they
told by
hang
a
them out.
friend.
Yeah.
But this is kind of interesting too. So while he's traveling, he took these photographs over the span of about 5 years, and then they were exhibited in 1985. While he was out traveling, he had different photography assistants help him. One of them, the more notable, the longer running one, and I'm not even sure, I think she was there for most of the time, was Laura Wilson, who she is a photographer herself, but she is the mother of Luke Owen and Andrew Wilson, the actors. So she herself, we've had Laura Wilson has had an photography exhibition here. She photographs in a lot of the same content in terms of things that you don't typically associate with the West. That's again what she's photographing, but she really cut her teeth working with Abaddon on this series, and then was invited to write as part of the intro for the larger catalog, the book that came for this. So I've met her. She's lovely. She is a very kind woman, Laura Wilson. So yeah, so we've got 2 women, and again, age is all over the map with these photographs. This woman, again, looks a little younger, a little older, but
yeah,
these look like harder lives have been lived. So that could have aged, I'm not sure sunscreen was really happening the way it would be now, or, if they're out in the field at ranches or grew up on a ranch, that kind of sun exposure can age you. In places that are higher altitude, you're closer, higher plains, deserts, you're closer to the sun, which ages you. So there's a number of elements that Abaddon is picking up on for those who were really part of the working class or the struggling classes in some of these states. So let's see. And he was really interested in not, making someone, they're this elite and iconic. He was really interested in kind of the chaoticness and the flaws of people, because that's what makes the person the person. So a lot of these capture some of those things, I feel.
yeah, oh yeah.
It's more everyday life in some of hers, these are just normal people.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. And so he then is experimenting with some double portraiture, and he was really, he was wanting to accomplish with this concept of, okay, well, here's a portrait of a person. This is a fleeting moment. This is the outfit they happen to be wearing at that time. There's a lot of things that can change from one day to the next with that person. So a portrait isn't always the most accurate depiction of someone. And we get kind of a sense of, we don't think this was this was taken within the same time, but could it have been minutes apart, hours apart? We don't know what that passing of time looked like, but his hair is already a little bit different than it was on the first one. So there's this sense of evolution and changing even between seconds of your existence. So he was really, interested with that notion.
He looks like he has age spots. So he gets worked out in the sun.
Well, and he's a drifter. He's identified as a drifter. So he might be spending most of his days outdoors with no sunscreen, no protection, no break from being out in the sun. So yeah, these are, sunspots. that kind of leathery look to his face from sun exposure.
Yep.
I
So,
wanted
you
to
know-
put something in perspective here, if I can remember it here. I went and looked at Augusta, Montana, where that physical therapist was.
Uh-huh.
In 2020, the census was 316 people.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So very small communities
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
these are from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Cheyenne's a tiny little town.
Well, it's not real tiny. It's the largest city in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but it compared to what you think of the American
Oh,
West.
yeah,
I mean,
compared-
yeah.
Compared to some of the, like I think Fort Collins, Colorado, and Loveland, and those places are, of course, definitely Denver, are much larger.
Yeah.
It's not a huge city, but it is the largest city. It's not a small. It's land-wise, it's not small.
Right. But I mean, it's like a 2-horse
Population.
town compared to.
Wyoming is one of the least populated states.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So population-wise, it's the most population of the state, but it's still a small population.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
And that was part of the appeal. I mean, he was going to
Yeah.
these places that weren't the ones you think of when you think of the West. And, you
Right.
might know Cheyenne. Growing up on the East Coast, I didn't know much about Cheyenne until I moved to Denver, and it was close. The Cheyenne wasn't really on my radar. Sweetwater was another thing. I didn't know what it was, let alone the rattlesnake roundup. So he was really shining a light on kind of these cultures that exist, but not the culture you're expecting, which is really kind of fascinating. And so here, this is the last portrait I'm going to show. They're just haunting. These photographs just stay with you. I mean, they're so beautiful, and you start to spin a story for this person just with the little information that you know. But these are not the people were expecting to see when it was announced that Avedon was taking these photographs. And
Certainly
then
not
this guy,
Jackie
I found
O.
out about 7 years after this picture, he went to, I think it was Texas State, and was pre-med. So, I mean, like, then these people, what's really cool, there's pictures we have in this series, a dad holding his daughter upside down by her feet, like playing around in one of the pictures. And then like 20 something years later, the dad and the daughter came to the museum and saw there's a picture of them standing next to that picture. So these people have lived on and lived the life that was for them. And it was this series, I mean, still very, very respected and well known and celebrated in the photography field, art field in general. So
He was just practicing his pre-med skills.
That's right. That's right. Doing
Yeah.
a dissection.
right.
It's-
I would
have
have
a
guessed
good
a
friend-
pre-veterinary, but here we are, pre-med. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
I have a
This
good
is what
friend
inspired him to go pre-med.
Right.
Yeah. I have a good friend who's a veterinarian, and basically that's how he got it. He's working with animals out in the farm and the ranches.
Yeah.
That's how he got his
Takes a
interest.
certain stomach to be able to handle that and
Yes, it does.
confidence.
Yeah.
Literally.
But
stomach's-
if you're ever interested, give Richard, we've looked at one of his portraits before of that singer, and of course I'm forgetting her name, something with an M. He sang on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, but
Marian Anderson.
yes. But
Thanks,
if you
Village.
give him a Google, you'll see versions of this. This is always one of the the bigger collection of series but he was photographing for Vogue, so you'll see his fashion photography as well. Very, very recognizable style of photography.
So Peggy,
Mhm.
I mean, do we have any idea what the time lapse between these two pictures are? Because one of them looks like he's a little bit younger, or not been outside quite as long. The other one looks like he's been outside for a long time.
No,
It'd be interesting how he found him twice, I guess.
he didn't
Well,
find him twice. This was all in the same photography grouping.
He's wearing the same clothes.
Mhm.
Yes. So this was taken, but we don't know. He would spend a lot of time with these subjects. So we don't know if it was like he took it in the morning, he took it in the afternoon. He just took, and then was able to later look back he was using a camera that was massive. It was an 8x10.
Oh.
The camera that was built that he was using had been out of manufacture for 30 something years, I believe, at that point. So there was no, I mean, obviously there was no digitalness where, we can see immediately what we're doing or how lighting is working and things like that. It wasn't until he was later developing that he was able to know what that looked like. So lighting, these were all taken outdoors, I believe, I want to say. And with this like cloth that he would bring and set up, and Laura Wilson would help him and they would get it all set up, and then they would go and kind of just mingle and walk around whatever the event was or the town. And so this was all within one sitting, but we just don't know how long that sitting was.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing is the one is a close up of him,
That's
where
true.
the other one, he's back feathered, and if you look at the mouth, his facial features and everything are different,
Right.
and that's what makes him look, I think, younger in the one that's
Yeah,
back.
and maybe since it's not quite as close up, maybe you don't see all the wrinkles and stuff
Yeah,
on his face.
Exactly.
That's how I want people to look at me. Stand back, and then my
Stand back.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
Me
gonna
too.
we're gonna zoom out on you, Peggy, okay?
Yeah,
And
I'm
we're
gonna be in that
zoom out.
corner soon talking, and you'll think, oh, she hasn't aged a day.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave you with those Richard Avedons. If you really are interested, I encourage you
Very
to
good. Thank you.
Google.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Peggy.
don't know what we're looking at next week, but I always have something up my sleeve. So I will, Martha, I'll email you later this week with our May topic.
All
Okay.
right, thanks, Peggy.
Thanks,
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your day.